You know the restaurant, you know the menu, but few know the true secret behind the Krusty Krab's culinary quality: SpongeBob SquarePants. Tonight, we'll explore the meteoric rise, tragic fall, and inspiring redemption of the Krusty Krab's famous fry cook with SquarePants. I'm Ken Shocknick, and this is SpongeBob DocuPants. It was just an ordinary morning in Bikini Bottom when a simple sea sponge emerged from his pineapple, ready to chase his dreams. Little did he know, the world of fast food burgers was about to change forever.
The legend is that SpongeBob marched right into the Krusty Krab and was just hired almost on the spot. And of course, there's actually a lot more to it than that. I don't really think that SpongeBob actually knew how good a cook he was. Now, he had a lot of self-doubt.
Filled with apprehension, the young sponge was on the brink of giving up before ever even chasing his dream of fast food greatness. It was then that he was comforted by lifelong friend and neighbor Patrick Starr.
Nobody believed in SpongeBob more than Patrick. The two of them, they were thick as thieves. And Patrick, he absolutely adored SpongeBob. He told him, "You're ready." And then SpongeBob said, "I'm ready." He was ready.
Starr's words ultimately provided what SquarePants desperately needed: determination, encouragement, and the confidence to confront Navy veteran and self-made owner of the Krusty Krab, Eugene Krabs. Although SquarePants had overcome his nerves with the help of one neighbor, his next obstacle would come in the form of another neighbor, Squidward Tentacles.
How to describe Squidward? Well, I mean, he wasn't a bad guy. No, I mean, okay, deep down, he had a good heart, but people weren't crazy about him. Okay, he could be a bit of a jerk, especially toward SpongeBob. SpongeBob never could see how poorly Squidward treated him. He always saw the best in people. SpongeBob actually believed that Squidward would put in a good word for him.
I think Eugene really trusted Squidward, and if he said SpongeBob wasn't a good fit, that actually carried a lot of weight. So they sent him on this crazy errand. They wanted him to find a hydrodynamic spatula with port and starboard attachments and a turbo drive. Those are really hard to find.
Looking for an excuse to get rid of the eager sponge, Krabs sent him on a seemingly impossible errand, an errand that SpongeBob accepted with blind optimism. But moments after he left, disaster would strike the Krusty Krab.
To say that the anchovies that frequented the Krusty Krab were rowdy would be an understatement. These anchovies were downright aggressive.
5 undersea buses. That's how many pulled up to the Krusty Krab that day, each one overflowing with relentless and hungry anchovies.
These buses were packed with anchovies. They were like sardines. I mean, they just came flooding into the building, and I remember I could hear one of them shout, "Meep." And then there was this other one, he said something like, "Meep." I couldn't make out the rest.
Overwhelmed by the sheer force of the crowd, Krabs and Tentacles were forced to climb to the highest point of the crow's nest, clinging to safety as they awaited what seemed like their inevitable doom. Krabs could only weep as the fast food empire he'd built with his big, meaty claws was mere moments away from total destruction. Or so he thought.
It was right when all hope was lost. I mean, Mr. Krabs was literally crying for his mommy. And then, out of nowhere, this unassuming sponge comes running in with this monster of a spatula, and he says, "Did somebody order a spatula?"
I mean, you couldn't write a story this perfect. SpongeBob looked like an action star. He even brought his own megaphone. No, the guy had nerve. And needless to say, suddenly Eugene is paying very close attention to this little sea sponge from Conch Street.
Seeing his opportunity at last, SquarePants took center stage and went to work, making what amounted to thousands of Krabby Patties in record time.
Squidward didn't even have to seat anyone. SpongeBob just served the burgers directly into the customers' mouths.
Whenever Eugene would talk about that day, you could see in his eye stalks, he knew how lucky he was. The kid was lightning in a bottle.
Knowing that a winning lottery ticket had just walked into his store, Krabs hired SpongeBob on the spot. And much to Squidward's dismay, SpongeBob began a fry cooking career that would forever endear him to the citizens of Bikini Bottom. He had found the kind of happiness only fry cooking could bring. But little did he know that rough waters lay ahead.
Everything was going perfectly for SpongeBob at the time. He was working out, he was doing martial arts, everyone adored him at the Krusty Krab. But then that's when Bubble Bass came into the picture, and things got pretty tough for him after that.
His turmoil would come in the form of indulgent and self-proclaimed food critic, Bubble Bass.
Up until that point, SpongeBob had only ever dealt with a sea of adoring fans. Now, in their eyes, he could do no wrong. But Bubble Bass, he wasn't messing around. If you crossed him, he was not above asking to speak to the manager, if that gives you an idea about the kind of guy we're dealing with here. It was a scary time for a restaurant when Bubble Bass came in. One bad review, make or break your business.
SpongeBob wasn't afraid of Bubble Bass, and why should he be? Since becoming a fry cook, there had never been a challenge that he couldn't tackle. Nobody saw the pickle scandal coming.
First bun, then patty, followed by ketchup, mustard, pickles, onions, lettuce, cheese, tomatoes, and bun, in that order. According to SquarePants, that's the official way to make a Krabby Patty. It was a blueprint he could never forget. Or so he thought. 2 standard crinkle-cut sea pickles. They may seem like a minor detail, but it's all it would take to send this once confident and renowned fry cook into a downward spiral.
Forgetting the pickles, even for a rookie, can have a profound impact on a fry cook's self-esteem. So for a fast food hero like SpongeBob, it's emotionally devastating.
It was the first real mistake he ever made in his fast food career, but it haunted the porous fry cook. Try as he might, he just couldn't shake the wave of shame that came with forgetting pickles. His talent for flipping burgers, which once came as second nature, had all but abandoned him. After being sent on leave of absence by Krabs, SquarePants hit rock bottom.
It's not something you ever want to see someone go through. He couldn't even function. If you came by his pineapple, just to check on him, there's a toaster hanging from the door. And somehow you just knew that something wasn't right. And the inside was even worse. He had his shoes on top of the TV, and his breakfast was nailed. I'm sorry. Thank you. It was just really hard to see. I think that being perfect, it was such a huge part of who he was that without it, he just lost sight of who he was.
At his lowest point, SquarePants found a friend in an unlikely source, his boss at the Krusty Krab, Eugene Krabs. Some speculate that Krabs initially sought to help solely out of self-interest, to save his now failing business. But regardless of his original intentions, once he saw the tragic state of his employee, a different motivation took hold of the crustacean. A feeling of fatherly compassion toward his young protege.
I think Eugene was really one of the only people who could have helped SpongeBob. He was the one who believed in SpongeBob in the first place. He was the embodiment of the Krusty Krab, of SpongeBob's hopes and dreams. SpongeBob idolized that crab.
Over the next 3 days, Krabs led an intensive intervention of focused meditation. It was the beginning of the healing process. The session included its share of discouragement, with an exhausted Krabs and an increasingly frustrated SpongeBob. And on the 3rd night of the session, SpongeBob's frustration reached its breaking point.
3 days is a long time to meditate. You can make a whole potato salad in 3 days. And in such extreme cases like this, all the self-pity and the discouragement can transform into anger. And that's why SpongeBob lashed out the way he did, and he directed it at Eugene. But in the end, that anger was what he needed. Sure, it was misdirected, but it acted as a motivator. It reignited the fry cooking fire inside of him, and everything came flooding back.
Mr. Krab wasn't even angry. I think he was more so relieved that SpongeBob was showing some form of emotion again. And you can tell that he was proud of the sponge for working through it. We all were.
For the first time since the pickle scandal, SquarePants had successfully assembled a traditional Krabby Patty. he was ready to face Bubble Bass.
When he finally returned to the Krusty Krab, it created quite a stir. The people wanted SpongeBob back. Ironically, they had never lost faith in him. And when he returned, so did the crowds. They wanted to support him, and they wanted to see him take Bubble Bass down.
It was a rematch for the ages. Bubble Bass arrived only moments after SquarePants. The only thing bigger than his appetite was his desire to knock his rival back to rock bottom. The restaurant was silent that day as the two behemoths of the fast food world squared off for the rematch of the century. SquarePants made a second Krabby Patty with impressive skill and inspiring ease, calling upon his regained confidence. But for a second time, the ocean went cold. The pickles were nowhere to be found.
The crowd was stunned. It had happened again. I mean, and as much as we all wanted to believe in SpongeBob, there was a bit of doubt that spread through the crowd. Maybe SpongeBob was losing his touch. I mean, you could almost feel all of the magic and the wonder in the crowd just start to evaporate. But SpongeBob wasn't having it.
What Bubble Bass didn't realize is that all the hardship and turmoil he put SpongeBob through, it actually made him a stronger sponge. As horrible of an ordeal as that was to get through all of that, he was now more confident.
And Bubble Bass is just laughing at the idea of ruining this kid's career. It was sickening.
But then, in front of a crowd of dozens, SpongeBob reached out an arm. And before anyone knew what was happening, the smile was quickly wiped off of Bubble Bass's face as the fry cook grabbed a hold of his tongue. Nothing could have prepared the onlookers for what he found underneath.
After all he put SpongeBob through, after all he put the world through, finally turned out, Bubble Bass was a fraud.
That dumb bass was hiding the pickles under his tongue. And it wasn't just 2 pickles, there were 4, the pickles from last time. You must have forgotten that they were there. But you know what? That means that SpongeBob had never forgot them in the first place.
It's impossible to say for sure why the burger-loving bass did it. Some speculate that he was jealous of SpongeBob. Others claim he's just one sadistic fish. But no matter the reason, Bubble Bass has gone down in Bikini Bottom history as the infamous fish who tried and failed to take down the town's beloved hero.
It's funny, you know, as much as Bass tried to ruin SpongeBob, I think he actually helped him. Now SpongeBob was able to realize how much he was capable of overcoming. You know, as horrible of an ordeal as it was, you know, going through all that. He was now stronger, more absorbent.
The people were shocked. They were angry, but most of all, they were relieved. We realized that SpongeBob had never actually made a mistake in the first place. And you know what? Shame on you if you thought SpongeBob would actually forget the pickles. Just because this bass tricked you. He tricked us all. If hiring SpongeBob brought the Krusty Krab into a golden age, the Bubble Bass ordeal brought it into a platinum age. The people were elated to have him back. He was even more of a hero now. He was someone you could look up to. It was all smiles at the Krusty Krab after that.
Truly, a lesson we can all learn. If at first you don't succeed, fry again.